What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Pick Spot Podcast. Here it is, Tuesday. I am James Brain. I'm here with Sean Bernard as usual. Sean, it's your first day of classes, buddy. We're mid-January. How are you feeling?
Yeah, hanging in there. Back in the school grind, so can't complain too much. Getting back at it. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, man. It's definitely the start of a grind. You can feel it for this spring semester. And as we're grinding, so are the Sixers. They currently stand in what, fifth in the East?
I think they dropped to
Or
sixth.
sixth. Six
Yeah,
behind the Bucks, because like 1 through 6 in the East is separated by like a game. It's
yeah,
very close.
very tight. Sixers are sixth. Yeah, right behind the Bucks. So it's Bulls, Heat, Nets, Cavs, Bucks, and then Sixers. And once again, like 2.5-point games out of the first. So still very much in the mix.
Yeah, so interesting season it's been, right? Everyone's kind of in a weird spot. The Cavaliers are good. I think
Mhm.
it's at first I kind of thought it would be a fluke the way like the Wizards were a fluke. Like they were really good at the beginning of the year and then they fell off. The Cavs have not fallen off, but the last time we were on air, we were waiting for a back-to-back against the Celtics and the Heat, and then yesterday afternoon the Sixers played the Wizards. So they got wins against the Celtics and Heat on back-to-back nights and having to travel to Miami
Mhm.
after being at home against the Celtics, and two like really good wins.
Definitely.
Um, the Heat win was really gritty, and I liked what I saw in that game. So what did you see from those two performances?
Yeah, I mean, my tone was significantly higher after the Heat and Celtics victories, the back-to-backs for that, and I was flying high with that. I agree. It was a very
Yeah.
gritty win. They just kind of hung around. At the beginning of the game, there was a lot of it looked like Embiid giving effort and not a lot to back him up. And then it's kind of as Embiid runs, the team follows. So it eventually kind of fell into place. Omar Yurtseven or whatever the guy's name is, I'm not even sure.
Yeah. You're at 7.
Unreal. He did the same thing, and the announcers kept talking about how it was the first time playing against Embiid, but he played against him the first time that he played him too, and he looked
Oh
good
yeah.
that game too. And I was at that one in person, so that was very disappointing to see this guy. But I do think he did his job against Embiid, but the Sixers found a way to win that one, which I guess is the biggest thing. And for me, that is the takeaway: just being gritty, being able to will. Like they just kind of hung around and found a way to come out at the end. So that was a big win. Disappointing to see him slip to one of the Wizards.
Yeah, the Heat game reminded me of like an opposite of what normally happens with the Sixers. Like they were down basically the whole game, and then they made a late surge. Embiid has just been so dominant in those games.
But yeah,
11 straight road games with 30 or more points. It's hard to say enough about him. And Drew Hanlon posted that video this morning. I'm sure you saw it,
awesome.
and I'm sure most people have seen it by now. But it really is true. Like there's a lot of shades of guard play in the way Joel Embiid creates his shots, and the mid range is where he flourishes. But like I was sitting down yesterday, and Embiid took a shot from 3, and I was like, just catch and shoot. It looks so smooth and in rhythm. It's like that's just as efficient as anything else on the floor for him.
Hmm.
It's starting to become like really just too easy at times. You can't sag off him. You can't really stop him. He's just decided he's going to start running the break, taking advantage. Like that's where he gets away from double teams. He avoids double teams by just bringing the ball up the court himself,
Yeah.
attacking on the perimeter. And then, like we've been saying, man, he's just so smart and just so tactical and surgical as a post scorer. So, I mean, I know you wanted to talk about like the peak Embiid or what the perfect scenario with Embiid is. Like, I don't know how much better this guy gets.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he gets enough credit for being like a student of the game and the hours that he puts in just watching film. And it's very cool the talent he has to be able to just like watch and implement something in his game. And we've seen that with Derek with the Olajuwon moves, which have been so much a part of his game growing up. And to see him like show this guard play within, and he's talked about how he's watching Kobe, he's watching MJ, and it's ridiculous like the way he is just literally watching and then just replicating, like how easy that is. And there's absolutely an element of the game slowing down for him. And you can see with just watching him out there, he's constantly moving other guys around and pointing for places to go. And like that is the next level of like basketball IQ and learning stuff. And I mean, we see like LeBron do that all the time, and Chris Paul and guys like making things happen and creating windows when before they even are there. And to see Embiid start to grow in that aspects is super encouraging. And I mean, there's always such talk about like the window, and obviously he is a unique case in that because of the injuries, and there's always like the looming in the back of your head. But this guy still has plenty of years of his prime ahead of him if he stays healthy. Like he's only gotten better and better, and like it's crazy to think that they're still growing to do.
Yeah, I think like again, I don't want to get too ahead of it here, but like when we think about how we've always talked about his prime isn't going to be that long. I don't know how many Embiid years we have left, that type of thing. When we're talking about punting this season, and we're going to talk about the offseason in a couple minutes, but just thinking about, you know, the way he played last year and how amazed we were with the step he took, I think he took a more important step this season in the way that he approaches the game. It's
Mm,
clear how much research he's doing. It's clear how he's so like confident and knowledgeable about the way he attacks a defense, and teams that have given him trouble before, like Miami. Miami always
mm,
gives him trouble. Did
yeah.
not do that this weekend. The Boston didn't do it. He's finding ways even in games like on Monday night or yesterday afternoon. Like at one point he had 30 of their 75. Like he is not going to be stopped. He's been dominating on so many different levels. And I think that is not something that's going to stop anytime soon. I think he's as hungry as ever. I think that's showing in the way that he's playing. And I don't know, like this is something that I could see going on for a handful of more years. Like you said, as long as he stays healthy, God willing, and the knees stay intact, I think that there's a very, very bright future that we haven't even tapped into yet with Joel.
Yeah, and I obviously hope that is the case and hope that that continues. The one thing I will say is obviously I'm not questioning his ability to do any of this. Like it's terrific the way he can just score, be a 30-point scorer, get the rebounds. But I do think that there's a world like when looking into the future, what the Sixers are really looking to build, I do think there's a world where like the ideal Joel Embiid is not necessarily the guy that's scoring 30 points a game. Like maybe he's just scoring like 22 and dominating the rebounds and being able to play better defense than that. Because just kind of the workload that's asked and everything that's put on his plate defensively, offensively, being the anchor of the defense and the creator on offense on pretty much every play, having to get involved in break is just so strenuous on him and so much that he has to do. And this also like the chance that he just burns out by the end of the year or ahead of playoffs is still absolutely a chance. Like he has not had to do this level of workload when we think about like an every game basis, how much he's doing. And even in the past, the games that he took off, and obviously there was the Ben Simmons here now, and this was a large part of Ben's role was being able to keep the team afloat when Embiid wasn't there. And with that not an option this year, Embiid is absolutely taking it on himself to just continue and just being that guy on an every night basis, which as he should, and it's awesome that he's doing that. But I do think if there was like a high usage pairing with him, like that could be a terrific way for him. And I think Joel would agree with that too, from a team aspect. If he could be a guy who defensively he's terrific when he commits, and there's games where he just can't because he's like up and back so much, he gets in foul trouble, and he's the only guy really protecting the rim. By the way, the Kuzma dunk hurt yesterday, but I
That was
do
all
think,
Tobias's fault. That was all Tobias Harris's fault. Did you
yeah,
see that? He just completely decided not to help on that play, and Kuzma had a lane right down the middle. I mean, and he put Joel on a poster to give him
yeah.
credit. He put him on a poster.
And to stick up for Joel, any rim protector that should happen to, like
Yeah,
the fact,
Rudy Gobert
yeah,
last
if
night.
you're, yeah, Russ Westbrook got Gobert worse than Embiid got. But
Yeah,
yeah, if you're a guy that protects the rim on a regular basis, you kind of that comes with the territories. That's going to happen, and it sucks that it's Kyle Kuzma, who will shout out has impressed me a lot more than I thought. But to get back to my original point, I guess I'm just saying if Embiid can be a guy who can lock down defensively, help out on the boards. I don't think he's a particularly great rebounder. He's just huge and ends up with a bunch. But if you
yeah.
could put that focus into like committing to boxing out and doing all that, I think that could help the team tremendously.
Here, like the way that I look at it with kind of the perspective that you're having is think of Kevin Durant when he went to Golden State,
Mm-hmm.
right? The usage goes down a little bit, the shots go down a little bit. There's more guys that are facilitating the offense that are, the main attraction. Like if you have Steph Curry on your team, things are going to be a little bit different. You have Klay Thompson, you have Draymond Green. The ball's not in Kevin Durant's hands as much. And I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
He was so effective when he did have the ball that it made it almost impossible to guard him because what are you supposed to do if you
Mm-hmm.
have KD and someone else? If you have Joel Embiid and someone else, you know what I mean? Like I do agree with you in that sense that given someone else the opportunities to handle the ball, to score, to create their own offense, defenses start to forget or start to at least loosen up on Joel. And then when he does get the ball, like we talked about this earlier in the year, like he rarely gets like gimmies. He very rarely
Yeah.
gets bunnies. He doesn't just get wide open layups. He doesn't just get those pick and roll dunks where, you know, the defenses slip up because no one else, like, there's no one else to really worry about. It's very rare where he, like, I think the easiest shot that he gets is when defenses kind of slack off a little bit in the mid range and he has like a pull up from the free throw line. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's as good as a layup for him. But like, I do agree with what you're saying. I think, and that's where we're going. That's the lane that they're headed though. And I
For
think
sure.
when you are talking about this move, and the impending changes that are going to be made, that is what's in mind with Joel, with Daryl Morey, with this team, is to put a piece next to him that's capable of bearing the offensive load on nights, on every other night, on every night, and they share what, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just going to take someone that's not, you know, John Collins to do that.
Yeah, again, this Ben Simmons didn't help with this regard, but like the aspect that Embiid needs, and this is why Tobias Harris is important to the Sixers team, is like there just has to be plays where he can be like, I don't need to do anything here. Like I can just watch this
Yeah.
one. Like somebody else do something. And outside of Toby, like all Toby's buckets are pretty much isolation, go score. When we think about Seth or Maxi, these are all guys that he's either screening or he's setting up, or like
Yeah.
his gravity is to some extent is involved. That those still are things that like those aren't the. It's awesome how much Curry scored. Those aren't buckets off for Embiid at all because he's almost always dribble handling off or setting a pick or picking and popping or doing something. And I do think there's been growth from Embiid as a roller, and I think that's something that could continue because once again, that's something that like is draining on you. It takes work. If you're setting a hard screen, rolling and attacking the basket, those are all hard work things. And now, granted, like of course he needs to do that. Like that's a center thing, something he needs to continue to get better at. But just like a guy that could just take that kind of pressure off, I think would do wonders for Embiid to just be the most efficient version of himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, again, I think Embiid talked about it before last week, saying he thinks that they have everything they need right now,
Yeah.
and that he's not really worried. And that's great to hear. I think that means, obviously, that means that Morey has convinced him and has brought him on in the ideology of we're going to make the best out of this when we can. And it seems more and more likely that's going to happen in the offseason. And to touch on some rumors here, and something I've been like has kind of always been in the back of my mind
Yeah.
ever since last year. And I think, again, this is something that's been on a lot of people's minds. You know, last year they didn't get a chance to make a real shot at James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
Whether, you know, the stories kind of conflict, whether it was Houston not wanting to do a deal with Daryl Morey, whether it was Doc Rivers trying to convince Morey to keep Simmons and give them a chance. Regardless of what it was, the opportunity to acquire James Harden came and went. James Harden recently, there's been some rumors about him being open to a relocation in the summer. It's probably going to be something of the sort like a Chris Paul deal, from what we saw 2 summers ago at least, where he could opt in for like 47 million next off season, which is a lot of money, or he could sign like, you know, one of those massive 2 or 3 year extensions that will get him into his 34, 35, 36 year old seasons, and he could make a lot of money and be there. That being said, I don't know that Daryl Morey is going to have another chance to acquire James Harden and let that pass. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to start off with, I absolutely love James Harden. I think he doesn't get enough credit for it. IQ wise, he's terrific basketball mind, and he's shown so much growth throughout his career, just from becoming like a 3-point shooter, the isolation, the trash kind of basketball, to a guy that really just artfully picks across the defense and pick and rolls and sees what's going to happen, develops, sets guys up. I think he's at his best as a passer and as a guy that runs the offense, is really a true point guard at this stage of his career. And obviously the shooting is never going to go away. The step back three is so huge. He would be perfect next to Embiid. He would be absolutely perfect. And I was banging my head against the wall wanting him at the last deadline, and so disappointed that the Sixers couldn't find a way to get that done. And I think Morey felt the same way. I think Morey absolutely did everything possible to try and make that happen. And there were some bad feelings from the Rockets GMs for Morey saying, actually, I'm going to retire. And then after kind of retiring, saying, psych, actually, I'm taking the Sixers job. So they weren't really willing to dish their star to Philly to Morey after all that. So I do think the lingering effects of that were there. There's enough smoke to this that I think there's some sort of chance, I guess. Like I'm not sitting here thinking like likely that James Harden after the season's over is dead set, but like there's enough here that gives me like real hope that this could be a thing.
I like the more and more that I've heard about it. Um, there was a post last night on Twitter that apparently James Harden liked the tweet that said the Sixers were interested in him.
Yeah.
Those are always funny to me because I don't even know what to make of them. But regardless, I mean, let's be real here. Who knows what's happening with Kyrie Irving? It's hard to tell what that relationship is like. KD's now out 6 weeks with that knee injury. Kyrie is only there every once in a while. Everything's about Kyrie there, and he doesn't like. Apparently, he doesn't like East Coast weather. I hate to break it to him. It's not much different between Brooklyn and Philadelphia, actually.
Yeah.
So
Philly confirmed on the East Coast.
yeah, definitely on the East
Yeah.
Coast, and I can tell you it's cold here. But aside from that, I mean, Daryl Morey did everything in his possible power to help James Harden and get him close to a championship in Houston. It still has eluded him that ring. I think that relationship is really similar with Joel Embiid, and if he could bring those two powers together, there's your likelihood of winning a championship. I think you could put three guys around him, around the two of those guys, and it doesn't really matter who they are. They're going to be a really competitive and difficult team to beat. And like, I don't know, man. It just the stars are kind of aligning in that sense that the Sixers have a lot of baggage right now that they could unload and then bring on James Harden. Like, talk about the flip of a century. But when you're talking about this deal, what does it look like to you? Because in my mind, like when I think about it, the best possible way, and obviously this is like the ideal situation and probably not a likely one, but if you're able to like unload Tobias and create that cap space,
Mhm.
um, like to me, it's like it's worth it to move like two firsts. Like if it's like Detroit wants two firsts in order to take Tobias, and then they're gonna buy him out anyway. Like you just send those firsts over, you clear
Yeah.
that cap space, and then if you wanted to trade Ben for John Collins, you do that, right? And you can move Ben for John Collins, and you can try to sign James Harden in the offseason. Like that's the type of thing that kind of comes up in my mind. But what does it look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, so to start with, both James Harden and Kyrie Irving are on player options at the end of this year,
Yeah.
meaning that they can become free agents if they want. I think that's very important to know. I think the most likely scenario is that this becomes a sign and trade with Brooklyn, is I kind of think the way that it would happen. So to me is kind of why this is more likely a hold Ben Simmons as a sign and piece trade, because both these guys will pretty much mirror a similar contract structure to that, and that makes it a pretty clean swap. If it is a sign and trade, there's kind of not a lot of leverage for Brooklyn. Like that would be to me a pretty 1-for-1, or we add a little bit of stuff, but the Nets are basically saying like, we know you're walking, so what can we do to get something out of it? So it's kind of a different negotiating standpoint then, because Harden can go and sign with whoever at that point. He is a free agent. So if it were to be structured like this, I think it kind of twists the tables back in the Sixers' favor in a way. So I do think it's at that core. I think most likely how I feel right now is that there's going to be some sort of Tobias deal just to, in some sense, just do something to like make some sort of try, change this team up a little bit, change the identity, give a little bit of hope. And I think the end goal of that must be like a lateral down the line, what set yourself up right. I think the Simmons sign and trade is probably the swap for Harden. So I think they're probably going to look for a Tobias, whatever piece would just complement that crew is kind of the short term trade.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting. And again, like at the end of the day, whatever you can do, you're
Mhm.
gonna have to do if you really want to make that happen. I'm just thinking in the sense like, and maybe you can kind of clear this up a little bit. But when I think like when James Harden, he said he wants, or what's rumored, it was Mark Stein that reported it, that he wants a multi-year deal.
Yeah.
So is that like would he be able to get, so if he was to extend with the Nets, would he be
Mhm.
making more money rather than if he just signed with the Sixers?
The Nets would be able to offer him more money than the Sixers could
Okay.
straight up on a deal, which is also why the sign and trade is kind of appealing on that end. And it also, from the Sixers aspect, would help with the cap situation a ton. Because even though like there's not really like a clean way for the Sixers to just
Yeah.
like clear cap space. Like even a trade for there's not like if you can find expirings, like that's kind of something, but it's really difficult to match with Toby's contract. And I think the best case scenario would be like to knock off a year from it, like and maybe get one more year of a max and then cap space for like the following summer. Would it be? But I don't really see a clean way where the Sixers should just clean up cap space for this offseason because they're so tied to Embiid, Simmons, and Toby, which is I think it's like 75% of the cap with that. It might even be a little more. I think it's a little more actually. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, and that makes it more difficult to kind of facilitate my idea. But in like, I also think about what Harden would do for the rest of this roster. Like, think about James Harden and what he does, scoring and facilitating and spacing the floor, passing and everything. Like, Matisse Thybulle becomes the automatic like three. Like, and you don't think twice about it if he's still there. Like, obviously, if there's a lot that has to go into that, but like his lack of offense is now like not a non-factor almost because Harden can make up for that. Harden's usage obviously makes up for that, and he can create for Thybulle. He can create for Joel, obviously, and then you need that defense. So like I just when I'm thinking about it, who do you like? Obviously Thybulle. There's some other guys, even Curry, but like some guys could get better with that type of facilitator. Is there anyone that you're looking at on this roster that's like sticks out as the guy that would benefit the most aside from Embiid?
Yeah, I think Danny Green's a big one. I think Danny Green has looked pretty lost this year with not. I mean, he's purely a shit in the or a sit in the corner catch and shoot guy. Like that's kind of his mo, and it works for him. That's what he's done. He doesn't have a guy that just does that this year with like the way the Sixers offense had flowed, and they've done a pretty good job like compensating for Ben Simmons not being there and playing through Embiid in a lot of ways. But that just doesn't create the same kind of like open looks on dishes to the corner. Like the Danny Green threes this year are on like the double and you get an open oftentimes with the back screen set for him. So there's like the over the top clean pass. And that's pretty much like the shots he's getting off or when he just decides to dribble it up the court and jack it up himself because he also does that way more often than I think he should. But Danny Green's a guy. He's on a 2-year deal. If he's not a guy that's ditched on at the deadline, I think could become like a effective role player again, even though he's getting old. I agree with your Matisse take. I think he would be great. I don't necessarily feel the same way about Curry. I think Curry, and the other part when I think about this deal, so Seth Curry was like a C guard who became like a B guard, like playing next to Embiid, like just playing next to him, upgraded Curry's that game that much. When looking at like, say they fall short of a Harden and they like this doesn't happen, like I think there's optimism there for a guy that's like nipping on the star caliber that he can make that leap simply by being next to Embiid. And like I do think that matters to an extent that it hasn't quite given like enough credit for.
Yeah. What about Maxey?
Maxey, I think Maxey would do a lot. The thing I would say about Maxey, I think he would help Maxey a lot. I would love for Maxey to not have to take on the responsibility of continuing to develop as a point guard. And I mean, he's improved in all areas of his game. I think Tyrese Maxey at his best as a basketball player is when he's creating his own shot, attacking the basket for himself, being a spark, being energy. He's doing very good at learning to be a passer, creating the offense better, obviously not turning the ball over. He's terrific at. I don't think that's him naturally at his best. And we're asking him to be a lot of things. I think if this was a little responsibility taken off it, it would help other parts of his game jump even further.
Yeah, I was actually wanted to have that conversation with you because, like, just looking at him and obviously something we talked about a while ago is that he's always been, he's always kind of shared the backcourt, shared the ball handling responsibilities, shared the facilitation responsibilities. He's a scorer. He really is.
Sure.
He's a pure scorer, and we're seeing now as a catch and shoot guy, he can be really effective. He's shooting what 40% from the year, from three. He's really good. He's been really good on the catch and shoot and pull-ups, which is like exactly what you need from him. But you just don't want to put him in a box, and try to control him and try to like because as a point guard, there's so many more responsibilities than just scoring. So in that sense, especially because I mean James Harden plays point guard. Like if we're being honest, he needs the ball in his hand all the time, for all the right reasons. But you could move Maxey to the bench and let him be the sixth man, and I think that probably suits him better. And like I just wish there was a world where Doc Rivers knew how to integrate bench players with starters and vice versa, because there's a lot of different aspects that you like about Maxey, and then he can play one way when he's the main option offensively, but he can also play another way if he's playing alongside Embiid and Harden, if that's the scenario. So there's a lot to like, obviously from him, but I think sending him to the bench not as a punishment but more as a way to let him flourish in the role as a six man or as just a spark plug would be honestly better for him.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, the labels in today's NBA have changed so much, but like if
Yeah.
Maxey was not 6'2", like nobody would think he was a guard really. That's just not how he plays. And dating back to Kentucky, like he played alongside like Emmanuel Quigley was the main point guard there, and they had another guard that I'm drawing a blank with his name, a guy that went undrafted, but also like a borderline NBA guy that's bounced around a little bit. So there was two like competent guards there, and then Maxey really was like the third tier. And again, if it wasn't for his size, like if he was bigger, this isn't even a conversation. He's really just
Yeah.
not a guard, but he is doing a very good job and has improved at creating for others, setting things up. The lack of turnovers has been terrific. There really hasn't been an area of Maxey's game that I haven't been, I haven't not been impressed with his growth. So he's done very well as a passer, but I do think at for his best and in the long run, I would like for somebody else to take that job.
Yeah, it would be nice. And for him, again, like I think
Mhm.
he would just benefit a lot. And like if you get the purest form of Maxi, I think that you'd be like all of us would be, very excited for him, as we all are, obviously.
Mhm.
And he's just been, I mean, he's been great in this stretch. He was great against the Celtics and the Heat. So to move on a little bit, there was another report. Sam Amick reported that the Kings were interested in, or at least considered, a Harris and Simmons in a deal. Um, from the Kings, that's a lot, to get back. So what would a package have to look like from the Kings if they were getting both Harris and Simmons?
The Kings are the one team that seems to like consistently keep popping back up, but when we factor in like the financial aspect of it, like this is the team that it really kind of could work with the swap. Harrison Barnes on a similar contract, Buddy Hield on a somewhat similar contract. Need a little more added to that. De'Aaron Fox, pretty heavy contract. All guys that you can kind of find a way. I mean, from the Kings end, I feel like there's way too much reluctance here. Like, there's a lot of guys on the Kings end. It feels like it's pretty pessimistic that they want anything above this. Like it's like you guys have not been in the playoffs in 15 years. Like Ben Simmons immediately would probably be a top 5 player in your franchise history and a
Yeah.
chance to flourish. And to me, there's a way too much turnoff for this deal on their end. With that being said, like I, I understand it's weird. It's a very much like it would have to be such like a serious kind of team flop. I still see it being a 3-team deal on how it ends up getting done. But I do think that there is something there with in terms to I would absolutely love Buddy Hield. I think Harrison Barnes is a pretty good fit. And I think Tobias Harris would be a perfect king. So I think that there
Yeah.
is something there.
Harrison Barnes I saw is like top 5 in catch and shoot efficiency this year. So
Yeah.
like talk about a guy that would be necessary. Like the corner 3 is Harrison Barnes. Like I think he's just like a lower maintenance version of Tobias Harris. Like he's just not going to be as
Yeah. He's
controversial as Tobias Harris has been, I guess.
He's also not a high volume guy, which is we're
Yeah,
gonna have part of these same kind of frustrations with that. I think like Harrison Barnes, I do think he'd be a slight upgrade fit wise and the things he does. We're still gonna be mad
defensively.
about a guy not being willing to shoot like
Yeah.
threes as much as they should.
Yeah, and I mean, I think but again, I think the way I see Harrison Barnes is almost the way I see Niang, um, where, like, Barnes is just over there, and he's a product of being with the Kings, and there's not a lot of guys that are, like, really creating, for him aside from Fox and I guess Halliburton as well, but, like, when you have the attention of Joel Embiid and the gravity of Joel Embiid and the way that the Sixers play, Harrison Barnes could really, benefit from that. I don't know, like, he's not gonna change the way he plays. He's been that player for a long time, but defensively, he's much better. Harris has been disappointing on that end this year.
Mm,
I don't know what it is, but, like, we talked about Buddy Hield before. I'm a very big fan of Buddy Hield. I know that there's, some defensive and effort concerns, but I think if anyone's shooting, nearly 10 threes a game and making 4 of them, you like them on your team regardless of the rest of their game. And, like, again, that makes up for everything, and if that's something I mean, so, like, if you're the Kings, like you said, there's too much reluctancy, there's too much, like,
yeah.
hesitation to blow that up. If you're the Kings, like, do you take again, from the Sixers aspect, that this might be greedy, but, like, if you're attaching multiple picks to Tobias Harris, is that not enough to get any of those deals done? Like, even excluding Simmons?
I don't know exactly what the Kings are going for, what their hopes are for like a direction of the franchise. Like if I'm the Kings right now, I'm absolutely targeting Ben Simmons. Like to me, that's like this is a chance to get like the closest thing that Sacramento really can get to a star and a guy that like has like will bring some energy, some life, some fun to the franchise in a way that they
3 more years.
yeah, in a way that they haven't really had. Like, I think that absolutely should be the target. I personally want to send Tobias here because, like I said, I think he's a perfect Sacramento King. I think he's a guy who can put up some empty stats. The numbers look good, never really competing, and that would fit in just fine there. But I mean, I don't know exactly what they want. It sounds like Halliburton still is firmly in their long-term plans. They're still very young as an organization. I think they need to get off these contracts with Barnes, Fox, and Buddy, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, I don't know. I think they should be way more excited and making this way more of a effort to get a deal done than I feel like is happening.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, who knows what's going on there?
It's like
Who
a
even
bland
knows who's in?
organization.
It's just it's never linear with them. It just seems like they're kind of doing whatever comes to mind on that day. So it'll be interesting to see with that as well because I mean because there's no certainty with James Harden and anything that's going on with that.
Right.
So it's hard to like bank on that. But if you are the Sixers, are you waiting I mean, and I know we've talked about this, but are you really waiting just for the potential of James Harden wanting to be elsewhere this summer, or are you, if you get a deal that you do really like before that happens, before James Harden happens, are you doing that?
Yeah, James Harden shouldn't be plan A. They absolutely shouldn't. Plan A should not be waiting around for this offseason. It still needs to be find a way to get something done and look for something now. It's tough. Like, Daryl Morey seems very tied to this top 30 list. Personally, I'm partial to. I'm getting closer and closer to the, like, rather than shooting for the A tier guy and now having two A tier guys to pair with Embiid, like, two B pluses to me might be just as good as an A. And I'm getting closer and closer to that mindset as Embiid continues to progress. Regardless of what move you make, you have to make sure on the back end, like, you're open for something else. Like, this can't be the all in, everything in the pot, because there is so much liquidity and fluid situations around the league. So regardless if you do or don't make a trade for this, like, the Harden thing I think needs to be at least in like the realm of possibility. Like, if they were to make a Ben Simmons trade, it should be for somebody with a couple years left, young and enticing, and somebody that can be repackaged if they need to be.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. It's getting less clear by the day. It
Yeah.
seems like, and it has been since like September. Um, I don't know. I think at this point I'm kind of in the camp of just letting it go to the off season, because there's just not enough there. Unless something obviously pops up, and I know Jeremy Grant has been a big topic of discussion
Mm-hmm.
today, especially because apparently Detroit is trying to move him. So I don't know, man. We'll see how it goes. Do you have anything else for the day?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Cool.
So the Sixers move on. They play tomorrow against the Magic. Is it in Orlando or is it at home?
In Philly.
So in Philly, and then they play the Clippers on Thursday. So we'll catch you guys again on Thursday. Sixers play the Magic. Check out our socials. I haven't talked about this in a while, I guess, because I'm kind of just getting used to it. But follow Sean at Sean Bernard _1. Sean _Bernard 1. Jesus. Follow me at JSBrain17. Follow the pod at PickSwapPod. Check out the YouTube. Follow us on all of your places you can get podcasts, and we'll catch you guys soon.